Now that you have observed a lesson and collected evidence, let's talk about what you do with the script and the data that you have collected. So this is an example of what evidence would look like if I was listening in a classroom. I would actually be writing things such as the teacher used a number line manipulatives to model multiple ways to solve the same problem. Student explained their answers to partners using I think sentence stems. Teacher rephrased students' responses and wrote them on the board using correct academic vocabulary. During a group task, some students received visuals and sentence frames, while others solved challenge problems. Teachers circulated with a clipboard and took notes on student responses during work group. All students were actively engaged in hands-on learning using real-life items such as beans or bears or blocks. Teacher reminded students of today's goal and referenced again during the lesson summary. Students use sentence stems such as I agree with or can you explain that? During the guided practice, teacher paused to ask, how do we know that that's the right answer? Small group worked with the teacher using basic number recognition tasks while peers completed different activity. Vocabulary words such as add, total, more were displayed with pictures and reviewed during instruction. Exit tickets were collected and the teacher sorted them into 3 piles during cleanup. If you notice here, there's no judgment, there's no opinion about what I thought about the lesson. This is simply what I observed using factual language. So now that I have my data, then it's time for me to categorize my evidence and determine where does these statements fall within the rubric. The first statement I have is the teacher used a number line and manipulatives to model multiple ways to solve the same problem. I look through domain 3 performance indicators and I know that the fact that she's using number line and manipulatives to model ways to solve the same problem requires knowledge of the subject matter. So that's a piece of evidence documenting that the teacher understands the subject matter that she's teaching. Then we have students explain their answers to partner using I think sentence stems. We know that that relates to communication skills, that students are actually speaking and using complete sentences, and there's communication between the teacher and the students. So that I put that statement under the communication skills. Teacher rephrased students' responses and wrote them on the board using correct academic language. So that goes into literacy development because the teacher is modeling academic language. She's writing so they can see the writing of what they have said. And not only that, but the teacher rephrases to make sure that there's academic language and proper English. So that's all literacy development. Then we have during a group task, students receive visual and sentence frames while others solve challenge problems. So the fact that the teacher is using different instructional materials for different students, there's evidence that differentiated instruction was taking place. Teacher circulated with a clipboard and took notes on student responses during the group work. If the teacher is taking notes of their student responses, she's assessing their understanding. So that, of course, is evidence that supports assessment. Then we have the last 2 on this screen. All students were actively engaged in hands-on learning using real-life items. Teacher reminded students of today's goals, referenced it again during the lesson summary. Those are both high expectations. Not only are students demonstrating that they are actively engaged during the lesson, there's evidence of that, that also the teacher linked the lesson to the learning objectives for the lesson. So that is how you categorize evidence. You go one by one, the different statements, and you find where does this belong. The more, especially for coaches, the more you use the rubric, the easier this becomes because you know the performance indicators you're looking for. You know what practices you're looking for, so you know what to script and what to record. But at the beginning, and I actually still do it to this day, when I observe a lesson, I script everything. I don't try to remember all the performance indicators. I just script everything. That way, when I'm sitting down to categorize my evidence, I don't have to worry about, oh, I forgot about the assessment piece. I don't have any evidence for that. No, I record and scribe everything that's going on in the lesson. Then I categorize my evidence. So you're going to do this for domain 3, only domain 3, using the data that you just collected. And when you are implementing this and you are engaged in instructional coaching, of course, you will do it for all the first 3 domains. But also remember, when you're doing walk-ins and not a full observation, you can be collecting evidence for a specific performance indicators, 1 or 2 performance indicators that align to the teacher's goals. When you're doing a full evaluation, then you should definitely collect evidence for everything. The other thing that you have to remember is if you go in for 15 minutes and you collect a lot of evidence, even if the teacher is not working on, let's say, assessment, you can still gather that evidence so that you have that evidence, and you, of course, document it in the observation form, but you have that evidence for the end of the year appraisal, for the second appraisal that you are going to conduct, so that you can give the teacher credit for everything that has been going on in the classroom. And we're not doing that summative evaluation solely on one observation. We give credit for the growth of the teacher throughout the year and for the things that the teacher has been implementing throughout the year.